Hello, welcome to Tales of Cape Cod. First, allow me to thank our sponsors for the evening, Liza and John Lewis and Lee and Jamie Hunsacker. Are you here? No, yes, thank you. Thank you. We couldn't put these programs on without the generosity of some of you. Thank you very much. I'm Helen Fair. I serve on the Programs Committee for the Board of Directors, and tonight we feature the beautiful village of Osterville, where I have lived for the past 20 years. Osterville is known for many things. A lot of you know it as a sort of a glamour, prestige spot where celebrities building houses. The early Bush family summered there, and Jackie Kennedy visited her friend Bunny Mellon there to plan the Rose Garden at the White House. And there's interesting stories. Sometimes we see a movie being filmed there and celebrities building houses there. Anyway, there's that part of Osterville. But I prefer to think, of the backbone of Osterville. The backbone being the citizens who make a difference. And our guest tonight is Paul Chesbro, who has lived in Osterville all his life. He has written thoroughly researched the village, gathered stories, old photographs, and put them into publications, some of which are for sale here on the table. And he helps with everything. He's around town. You see him. You see him at the library. You see him tending there's this, like a roundabout in town where the traffic passes, and he plants the flowers and takes care of it. He helps with everything. He's a very valuable citizen. And so we have the treat of having him here tonight with us. Just a little bit more about him. He lives on Scudder Road in the house where he grew up. And his mother was quite a prominent person in Osterville. Lots of people seem to know her. Her name was Grace. What was her last name, Paul? Grace Crocker. Grace Crocker. She died at age 93 in 1998. Anyway, Paul grows vegetables in the garden and flowers. In fact, his mother was a florist. And his vegetables are for sale at our weekly farmers market. It's a very successful farmers market. It takes place on Monday mornings. If you haven't found it yet, it's really just great. Every Monday in season. And Paul's vegetables are mostly sold out by the time I get there. Okay, and what else do you do? You're around, Paul, and we appreciate you. So please join me in giving him a warm welcome. Oops, I know.
Now, can you hear me? Yes. If you can't hear me, let me know. I have a loud voice, and a lot of people have showed up, and there's no sense of me talking if you can't hear me. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the village of Osterville. Now, the subjects will change in a hurry. I've got this little easy button. So we might be in Osterville 1 minute and in Arizona the next minute. So the subjects are going to change. I'm not an English expositor. The name Chesbro is more common in Western Mass. Years ago in the town of Adams, Mass. However, my mother was a crocker from the town of Osterville, and her crocker line goes back to the 1600s to William Crocker. Mother graduated from Osterville High School in 1924, and myself 31 years later. When asked to do this talk, they wanted a title right away, for I was leaving for Arizona. So the title, Oysters and Catboats, most definitely pertains to Osterville. I will comment on those subjects later on in the program. You might ask, how did you get started with this project? As a youngster, I always enjoyed history, geography, some math, but no interest in science or related subjects. I learned more about English grammar after high school. Stamp collecting was also a big help. Dad collected stamps as a young man, but his early passing in life left that interest for me to pursue.
That was easy.
When I was a youngster, my mother would take her father, Willis Crocker, my grandfather, on Sunday afternoon to visit some of his cousins. What a bore. Paul, sit in a chair and behave. Don't I wish I had written down their conversations about old Osterville, but can't remember one.
That was easy.
Now, my father had an aunt who lived in Adams, Mass. She had met a World War I Army nurse, and they became friends and very adventurous. So off to Arizona they went under the old Homestead Act. They ran their own business by taking care of people recuperating from TB and rheumatoid arthritis. My first visit to the Phoenix area was in 1959. My great aunt suggested I take a bus tour to the Grand Canyon. While on the overnight tour, we all had to introduce ourselves and where we were from. I was stuck with a group of senior citizens. Only three of us. I'm 85 now, so you can see how I feel. Back then, I was only in my 20s. I was stuck with a group of senior citizens. Only three of us lived east of the Mississippi River. Two old ladies from Bristol, Rhode Island, and me from Osterville. One of the ladies asked me if I had ever been to Eddyville Railroad in Carver, Mass. Yes, I have a distant relative by the name of Nelson Blount, who owned the railroad at that time. Had no idea how he was related, just heard the name Blount in my mother's family. The lady was shocked. How are you related to him? I don't know. The lady said to me, Nelson Blount happens to be my son-in-law. So the story of research begins. Once home, my mother had an aunt still living and was very well advanced in years. Her name was Mrs. Hallett. She lived across from Midway Garage. If some of you remember the name Bucky Hallett in Osterville, it was his mother, was my mother's aunt. She knew how we tied into the Blount family. One of my great-great-grandmothers was a Blount before she married a Crocker.
That was easy.
Okay. Well, I want to make this interesting. Sometime in that time frame, Mother became president of the Historical Society, and she would have meetings at our home. Most of the old Osterville people there would have been born between 1880 and 1910. They brought old pictures of Osterville, plus old school pictures. I had them copied.
That was easy.
At that time, a cousin on my mother's side began to publish a newspaper called the Village Advertiser. The paper would run these old photos in its paper one at a time. What was left of the old people, this brought enjoyment to this specific feature in the paper. People began to clean out their attics and boxes of old photographs. I would go weekends, if I had the time, house to house to the old Osterville folks to make a visit. The photos would be identified if possible. This went on for years. Well, I had to work too. Mrs. Malcolm Crosby called me about an old box of records she had found in her home. The records were all the births, marriages, and deaths of all old Osterville families beginning in about 1695 through 1865. They were a great help. Also in the box were countless old deeds going back to the early 1700s. I spent hours going over them. Bernice Chadwick, who was assistant town clerk for many years, was a great help until I think she got tired of me asking her to check the town records. She suggested I go to the Sturgis Library. All the old town records had been copied in regards to births, marriages, and deaths. While at the library, they allowed me into the vault to look at the old Barnstable Patriot newspapers. Anything I found interesting about the village of Osterville, I wrote down, all by longhand. Then had friends type it up for me. If I found an article about someone who had removed from Osterville years ago, I would write the town clerk, historical society, library, if they had one. The response was so-so, fair. In some cases, I never heard. If the response was what I was looking for, could they send me a photo of the person, or could they contact the family if they had any heirs living there who had been born in Osterville years ago? This was an ongoing project, again, for many years. I also rubbed all the old slate gravestones in the village cemetery. I don't think you're allowed to do it anymore, but I did it. This was years ago. And others as well. Would copy all the Bible verses on the stones or related subjects. This again took time and hours. Was also able to tape record some of the old Osterville people. Wish I had done a lot more. Between writing people, going to the Sturgis Library, reading the writings on the gravestones took time. Again, I had a job and property to keep up. When I started this project, a few old people born in the 1870s were still living. Their minds were sharp. However, that is years ago now. Time marches on. Once in a great while, I might be contacted in regards to someone's ancestry, but very few. All of this research has been recorded in 3 books. 1988, This is a history of the village from its beginning to World War II. 1989, this is a history of all the people from the beginning till World War II. And then in the year 2010, this book came out, and it goes up to the year 2000. It also has a lot in it, and it has a wonderful subject of all the servicemen who served in the service during World War II. Now, I have never owned a computer, iPhone, or related electronic gadgets. Everything was written out by hand. I can't begin to do justice to all the information that is recorded in volumes 1 through 3 due to time. Now, in 1979, this book came out. This book sold out overnight. It had 500 old photographs of Osterville from 1860 to 1930 and sold out overnight. So I don't have any of these. Now, Helen asked me about the title. It's Helen, right, Helen? It's Helen. Oysters and Catboats. Well, volume 1 here, I can't read it all. Volume 1 has a wonderful story about the oyster business in Osterville in the 1920s, and it was done by Chester Crosby Sr. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. That was a very popular man years ago. And then in volume, this one here, there's as far as the catboats, there's a wonderful story about the naming of the catboat and how it got its name. But it's way too long to read, even if I gave you a brief resume about it. How a lady, one of the Mrs. Crosby's years ago, I don't know, back in the 1830s, 1840s, she got involved in spiritualism. Well, her husband died, and he was just a young man, and he had some plans for a boat. Well, so she got into spiritualism, and she claimed she talked to him. Now, whether she did or didn't, I don't know. But during these seances they had, they gave her the additional information on how the boat should have been built. So you could take that for what it's worth. Now, I have picked out some names. I have picked out some names here of Osterville people. Now, I don't want to show favoritism or anything, but these are names that you might have heard. I'm going to give you a little sketch about some of these people. This one starts off sort of funny. This is Samuel Ames. He's one of the founder of Dome Beal and Ames Funeral Home. That's where the name Ames. He was one of the founders of it. Okay. This was his son, Wolcott Ames, a son of Samuel, also a bank president on the Cape for a good many years. Okay, this is Josiah Ames. He's the maternal grandfather of Chester Crosby Sr., and he went to the California Gold Rush. And in volume 2, there's quite a lengthy story about him and how much gold he found. And he was out there 3 or 4 years, and he went down around South America all by boat. He came back the same way. And all of his journey on the boat is written up again in volume 2, but it would take hours for me to read it. Okay. Go ahead. And this was his cabin that Mr. Ames, Josiah Ames, built while he was a miner during the gold rush days. All right. Another young fellow was Mr. Elmer on the right. Jackie Elmer, he was a little bit ahead of me in school. He was a selectman for the town of Osterville, and he was also president of the Massachusetts Maritime. All right. Then this is Victor Adams. I'm sure some of you, if you lived in the town of Osterville, as long as I've had, you've heard of Victor Adams. He was a selectman for the town of Osterville for a good many years. And he shows him here picking cranberries. All right. This is the Chester Crosby Sr. family. Mr. Crosby up in the upper right-hand corner, and these people now are all gone. All right. Now this here is Horace Crosby, and he was one of the sons of the lady who became a spiritualist. This is Horace Crosby, and he was one of the designers of the now famous Crosby Catboat. All right. And this is Worthington Crosby. He's the brother of Horace, and also one of the designers of the Crosby Catboat. All right. Now, Horace's son, this is the most popular one nowadays. I used to know this man. He's the youngest son of Horace, and he was another designer of the Crosby Catboat. And if you go to the museum over in Osterville, you'll see pictures of him and some of the boats there that he was famous for. All right. Okay. Okay, this is Oliver Hinckley. He built coasting schooners in Osterville prior to the catboats. In his boat shop, if you came into Osterville from Route 28, went around by the country store where the flagpole is, where Bay Street is, right on the end of Bay Street, Oliver Hinckley had a shipyard, but you could tell by the dates, it's long before my time. But that's him, Oliver Hinckley, and he built coasting schooners. All right. This is Captain Joseph Parker. That Joseph A. That should be, I don't know where they got that, should be Joseph H. He sailed many times to the Orient. This portrait was painted in China in 1849. You can read about his rescue at sea in Volume 2. On a voyage to Panama after 2 days on the open seas. He returned home 30 days after his boat went down with a broken leg, etc. Okay. Now, this is Temperance Parker. Now, if you know anything about Osterville, that if you play golf, there's a pond over there. It's called Aunt Tempe's Pond. As you go down Parker Road, where the 9th green, the 8th green, the first fairway. This is Temperance Crocker Parker. Many of her descendants still live in Osterville. This is a copy of a very old tintype. Parker Road in Osterville, it starts where the flagpole is named for this particular Parker family. All right. Okay, this is Charles Parker, grandson of Temperance, town of Osterville town clerk and treasurer for many years. A great-grandson would be Carl Riddell. If you know of the Riddell Plumbing and Heating, Carl would be, this would be his great-grandfather. This was taken on Main Street, he lived just about where Fancy's Market is. That's where the Parkers, that's where they lived. Okay? This is Captain Nathan West aboard the schooner William L. Burroughs. This is out in East Bay. A very prominent sea captain of the village of Osterville years ago. All right? Okay, if you've been to Osterville, you go to Dowser's Beach. Now, the Dowsers were not from Osterville. They came there. This might be the only summer resident I'll show. Osterville Beach named after them. They owned a house there, but it was destroyed in the 1944 hurricane. When I was a kid, the only place you could go if you wanted to go into the salt water was either East Bay Road or at the end of Weano Avenue, where Weano Avenue and Seaview Avenue, where they meet. And the Dowse family gave Dowser's Beach to the town of Barnstable. Now, they had two daughters. I knew one of them. And the other daughter married Sinclair Weeks. And he was a Secretary of Commerce in the Eisenhower administration. Sinclair Weeks, okay. Now, this is Augusta Lovell Rich. In 1877, her sister, who lived off Cape, asked her to write a letter about all the old families in Osterville. The letter has been destroyed, which was a shame, the original, but I do have copies of it. And she went house to house, and the letter would stretch from here to where you got your table set up there. It was a huge letter, it was all rolled up, but somehow it got thrown away. And she went from house to house, explained out who all the families were, beginning in about 1840. It was very, very helpful when I did the research on Osterville. It's a wonderful help. So if you want to know who lived in an old house, and I'm afraid Osterville doesn't have many left, you go to her, that letter she wrote, and it'll explain who lived in that particular house. All right. Now, this character is not from Osterville, but he's a colorful foot traveler. His name is Barney Gould. I think he lived in Hyannis. He would put on talks in the 1880s at the at the Osterville Village Hall. It's called the Veterans Hall now. That's Barney Gould. Okay, next picture. This is Captain Lovell, George Lovell. He was a sea captain. He served in the War of 1812 and was captured on the high seas and sent to prison in England. Owned many coasting schooners, one of Osterville's most respected citizens years ago. Served on the board of directors of the Barnstable Bank. Next picture. This is Benjamin Hallett, father-in-law to Captain Lovell. This man served in the Revolutionary War for 3 years, mostly on the high seas. He had 12 daughters and 1 son, a well-known Osterville person in his day. Now, if you know Gail Nightingale, her husband used to be chief of police. Gail Nightingale, who owns the Dannel block in Osterville, her sister's passed away now. She would be a direct descendant on her mother's side from this Benjamin Hallett. There aren't many heirs left of this man. Okay, the next one. Okay, this is Memphis Hinckley. This is the oldest known likeness of an Osterville resident. He also served in the Revolutionary War. Now, a fifth-generation grandson would have been Albert Hinckley. And he was, of course, deceased, but he was a former chief of police for the town of Barnstable. This would have been his great-great-grandfather, and once again, it's the oldest likeness of an Osterville resident. Next picture. Okay, here's how this project got started. I told you I ran into the Blount lady out in Arizona. This is William Blount. He was born in London, England. That's his wife, but I'm going to talk more about him. He served on the British frigate Guerriere, was taken captive during battle between the Guerriere and the USS Constitution. Somehow he got to Osterville in 1815, where he lived out his life. Some of his descendants own the Blount Marine Shipyard in Warren, Rhode Island, the ferry boat Uncantina from Hyannis to the islands built by Luther Blount shipyards in Rhode Island. Luther would be a great-great-grandson of this William Blount. Now, when this fellow died, he left the Blount cane, and we happen to have a son of one of the ladies that held the Blount cane is here this evening. His mother held the Blount cane. It is handed down to the oldest Osterville person. It's funny, if right now the oldest Osterville resident had to move from Osterville, lives down Florida. Pansy Kalis. Her folks used to own the old village store, but that's William Blount, and that's how this project got started, because of this character. And he happens to be my great-great-great-grandfather, one of them, on my mother's side. All right. This is Freeman Scudder. He is the founder of what is now Scudder and Taylor Oil Company. It's now based in Hyannis, but it started in Osterville. That's Freeman Scudder. All right. Next picture. This is Judge Henry Scudder. Served in the state legislature, also judge probate of this county. Served on committee to nominate Lincoln as president. Next picture. This is Zeno Scudder. Served as an attorney in Barnstable County, was president of the Massachusetts Senate, also a member of the 33rd Congress of the United States. Now, before we go into the scenes, Helen asked me to, this organization is called Tales of Cape Cod. I'm going to tell you a couple of tales, so pay attention. One day, years ago, before World War I, Joe Tallman met Norman Williams in Osterville Center. Joe asked Norman if he would like to go to Florida to see what it was like there. Norman said he would ask his father. Several days later, Joe saw Norman in the village and asked him what his father said about going to Florida. Norman said he asked his father, but his father didn't want Norman to go to any foreign countries. All right. Okay. Here's another story, and I got one more after this. Then we'll go to the scenes. How are we doing on time, okay? Are you interested or? All right. About 1880s, one of the local pastors asked for a show of hands from his congregation on whether or not his flock had been reading their Bibles on a daily basis. Most of those there indicated they were. The pastor said his message, homily or sermon, whatever you want to call it, the following week would be from the 17th chapter of the Gospel according to St. Mark. The following Sunday, the pastor asked for a show of hands if his flock had read Mark chapter 17. Most of those indicated they had. Now, I want to see how sharp you people are. There's a mistake here. Does anyone know what the mistake is? Raise your hand. What's the mistake? Raise your hand. What's the mistake?
There is no chapter 17.
What?
There is no chapter 17.
You're right. Come on up here. Oh, just before I came here, I picked some nice peppers for my garden. Right there. They're yours.
Thank you very much.
There's no such thing. Well, I wanted to make this interesting, you know. There's no such thing as the chapter 17. Okay, now let's go to the scenes. I don't have any notes for the scenes. I can pretty well jibber-jabber about the scenes. Okay, this is Main Street, Osterville, one of the oldest homes. It's still there. If you know where Main Street and Blossom Avenue intersect, if you're going along Main Street, you turn right on Blossom Avenue, the house right across the street, and down the road would be the Midway Garage and the fire station. That's from an old tintype photograph taken, I don't know how many years ago. Okay, go ahead. Okay, this is the center of Osterville. The old Dry Swamp Academy way up there to the right. Crocker's store right here. It's now, I think it's a brand new real estate agency. What happened? Did the battery go low? Well, we got a repair crew coming in. You know, I didn't get a TV in my house till the year 2013. And when it comes up on the screen, low voltage, I don't know what to do. I have to call the guy across the street. They're going to work, is it? Craig or Greg or... Huh? I'm glad he's doing it, not me. Well, while he's doing that, it's been fun. Okay. All right. That's the center. So this here on the left would be Weano Avenue. And right into the center, the Baptist Church, Dry Swamp Academy. My mother went there. My grandfather Crocker went there, and Crocker's store. Go ahead. Okay, there's Crocker's store around 1900. That's the Daniel block on the right as the intersection of Main Street and Weano Avenue. Okay. Now this is another one of Crocker's stores. A bunch of characters out there. This would be heading towards Centerville or Hyannis, and Weano Avenue would be that way. And I say it's taken years to find these old photographs and to trace the families down. I can't begin to tell you how many letters I wrote. Sometimes I didn't put my return address on them. And they probably ended up in the dead letter office. So. All right, next picture. And this is where the, what is it called? Pocket full of posies, the package store, the barber shop in Osterville. Oh, it's all been added on to, but it's called the Daniel block in Osterville now. All right. And this would be a garage, Carl Lagerin. This is an old bicycle shop. This would be just to the left of the Baptist Church. There's a big fancy store there now. But that used to be a place where you could have your bicycles. And then it became a place where you get your automobiles fixed. Okay, next picture. This is right across from the house and garden. It's called the Patterson Block. the Pattersons. He was a prominent attorney in Osterville years ago, and that's the Patterson block. It's well, when I was a kid, there used to be an A&P food store there, and there was a theater there, a movie theater in there as well. Okay, it's right across from the House and Garden, and a lot of that building is still there, but the front of it's all been changed. Okay, go ahead. Okay, if you came into Osterville from Route 28, where the flagpole is, this is a very old picture, probably taken about, as it says there, 1860. And where those kids are standing, or young people, are what the hay scales. And later, when the boats, people used different means of heating for their home in the wintertime, and they used to weigh stuff. There was a set of scales there, and that's Main Street heading that way, and that's Parker Road heading that way. It's a very old photograph, one of the oldest of what Osterville downtown looked like years and years ago. All right, next one. If you remember the country store, it's right across from the where the flagpole is there now. If you're coming down from the fire station, if you know Osterville, you turn around Bay Street, and then Parker Road, and then continue on into the center of Osterville. Who was the lady that sold rugs? Claire Murray had a shop there for maybe a couple of years. But that's the old country store in Osterville, 1896. All right, next picture. This is another country store. This was at Parker Road and Bay Street. I think the building there now is called the Alger. John, the Alger family. It's a law office and other things are there. But that's at the corner of Bay Street and Parker Road. Okay. Okay, this is the earliest picture I could find of the Crosby boatyard. Circa 1884. And the little shack on the way to the right was where Worthington Crosby, you saw his picture earlier, picture of him. And this is the Crosby boatyard. And that house in the background has been moved. It's up on Bay Street now. All right, next picture. Okay, this is the Crosby house. It was just simply a small house, according to that Rich letter of 1877. And of course, it's been added on to here. And they used to take in guests. And my mother, when she was a young lady, before she got married, she used to, well, she did work there in 1884, but she worked there when, right after World War I. She used to wait, she was a waitress there. And that's the old Crosby house. It later became known as the Manor, Osterville Manor. I think it was torn down, I can't tell you how many years ago, probably 40 years ago it was torn down. Okay, go ahead. Now, if you're coming from Centerville into Osterville, this is the Centerville River. You go across the little causeway there, and you go into Osterville. But this way would be Centerville. That way is Osterville. That's an old picture. I'd say 1880, 1890. All right. All right. If you people like to eat at Wimpy's, that house on the right is where Wimpy's is now. And right across from Wimpy's would be the Veterans Hall, and you go up the hill was where the post office and the library is. And you could see the church steeple in the background. But that's where Wimpy's is located now. All right, next picture. Okay, this is and it's spelt right too. This is the Carter Chesed house. It's It's the forerunner of the Wiano Club. And it was completely destroyed by fire, I think, in 1888. Okay, next picture. Now, there's the Wiano Club when there was a dirt road. I can't afford to be a member of the Wiano Club. It's a little out of my price range. But that's the Wiano Club, circa 1890. All right, next picture. Well, the first picture I showed you of Mr. Ames, Sam Ames, that's his hearse wagon. That's what they carried you to the cemetery in. All right, next picture. This is the famous East Bay Lodge. Some of you probably remember it when Bob Keston used to run it. But long before him was the Burse family, Nelson Burse. But that was taken or torn down years ago. And they got, what do they call them, condos in there now. All right, next picture. Now, if you go out, if you have a boat, you go out of West Bay out in what's called the Cut, out into Nantucket Sound. That's it about 1900. And once again, these books, I can't stand here for hours, but these books will tell you all about how it was being made and the construction company and all that. And that's the Cut. Well, that wood isn't there. It's all rock along there now. But that's the Cut going from West Bay out into Nantucket Sound. All right. Now, this is Fancy's. And I think the third floor has been taken off. It's right across the street from Armstrong Kelly Park. Fancy's Market. I'm sure some of you have been in there and bought goods, things like that. And that was owned by Henry Crocker. Some of you might remember the Fuller family, Virginia Fuller. I don't know too many of you here, but that Henry Crocker would be her grandfather. All right, next picture. This is the old town hall or village hall in Osterville. It's where the Veterans Hall is now. So if you go to eat at Wimpy's, look across the street to Veterans Hall. That's what was there. It was a church, used as a church. Village meetings were held there up until when the new one was built in 1897. Next picture. Okay, this is the blacksmith shop of Mr. Leonard. If you know, that's Pond Street. If you know where the Methodist Church is in Osterville, you just go down that way and you head out that way. That was at the corner of Pond Street and Main Street. Is that the last picture? Oh, no. Now, I showed you a picture of this fella here. I'll walk up here. This guy with the cane. Captain Lovell, George Lovell. Now, I found this picture from his great-grandson. He lived in Essex Fells, New Jersey, and then he retired over to Martha's Vineyard. Well, I don't know any of the other people, and I ran this in the Barnstable Patriot, long time ago, to see if anyone else could identify any of the other men, but I didn't get any response. So he died in 1861. He might be fairly feeble there because I see he's got a cane. So that picture was taken probably in the 1850s sometime. Now I think that's the end of the slides. And is that the end, Craig or George? All right, I'm going to tell you one more story. I told you the story about the guy that wanted to go to Florida, but his father thought it was a father thought it was a foreign country. There was a lady born in Osterville, and she got a long name. Her name was Gulielma Mariah Springnet Penn Ellison Wing Allen. She had 7 names: Gulielma Mariah Springnet Penn Wing Allen. That's quite a long name. All right. She liked to make calls and be present at any social affair in the hall. Well, I don't have any picture of her, where she was always very proper in her deportment. I think she never went to church, and we children, this is a lady writing who knew her, knowing she was easily startled, we dearly loved to tease her. Having a slight illness, the first question would be, am I going to die? The nurse, Aunt Delaney, said, Gulielma, you should pray. Well, she would. Oh, Lord, if there is a Lord, save my soul if I've got a soul. And take me to heaven if there is a heaven. There, now I suppose you'll do as you damn please. Another story is she would swear quite fluently. If she had a pain, Ida, who was with her at one time, said, Guli, if you stop swearing, I will go home. If you don't stop swearing, I'll go home. She promised, Ida, I won't say another damn word. So that's the end of the stories. If you've got any questions on old Osterville, these books here are chock full of information. Of course, if you're not, I'm not trying to put Osterville down in my books, but they're strictly on the village of Osterville. And as I said, Volume 1 deals with the history of the village, a lot of old photographs in them, up till World War II. Then there's a history of all the different families that lived in Osterville. It took years to trace these families down, gosh. And then the last one came out, as I said, in 2010, and it goes update till the year 2000. And there are so many new families in Osterville that all the old families, like the Scudders and the Parkers and the Blounts and the Lewises. We got a Lewis here this evening, but that was his mother's maiden name. And I don't want to embarrass him, but it was his mother that held the Blount cane. And all those old family names from Osterville, when I was a youngster growing up, have long gone. Very, very few left. Now, does anybody have any questions? Well, thank you. Thank you, Craig and Greg and Craig. I guess I got it straight. Anybody got any questions? I guess not.
At what point did Oyster Harbors become prominent?
I would say Oyster Harbors became back about 1920s, before the Depression. Oyster Harbors became, but it really didn't get on. When I was a kid, you could go over there, but of course you can't now. And I do a lot of valet parking for those people in the summer, so I have a chance to get over there periodically to see all the nice homes. But all the old families that I knew over there, there's young Zenas Crocker. He still lives there. He runs this, what is it, the Clean Water? Is that what it's called, the Clean Water? Yeah, he's the head of that. He still lives over there, but all the DuPonts and the Mellon family, they've gone. I don't know any of the names. Now, I'm going to say this remark kindly. I live in all the people that live around me are good Irish families, and they're awful nice people to me. They bring me food. They feel sorry for me. I don't know why, but Oyster Harbor's got a lot of Irish that live over there, and they're very well-to-do people, but I don't get over there, only when I do valet parking. So I would say one of these books will answer that question. Go ahead. Anything else? Go ahead.
Do you know if there's any relationship between the Hinckleys of Osterville and the Hinkley boats in Maine, or Crosby's down here and Crosby sailmakers in Marblehead? Those same families?
Probably if you went back far enough, probably. Most of those families would back into the late 16s, early 1700s. Most of those families tie in somehow, but I can't answer that. I think the Crosbys came to Osterville to build boats, I would say, in the very early 1800s, 1810, 1820, in that time frame. So, and they perhaps might tie into other particular families. Anyone else? Go ahead.
What's the history of the Veterans Hall in Osterville?
You got to speak up.
What's the history of the Veterans Hall in Osterville?
Well, the Veterans Hall, again, took where the old village hall, then it became the Veterans, it was called the Horticultural Hall, and the veterans purchased it, I would say, night after the Second World War. So the building was built in 1898 by a fellow by the name of Chadwick, Allen Chadwick. And when my mother graduated from Barnstable High School, he was chairman of the school board. But then at World War II, the Veterans Association bought it, and it's still held by them. Anything else? Was that okay, Michelle? Okay, thank you. All right. I happen to know her.
I meant to mention at the beginning, the way that Chesbro got here, Paul's grandfather, was that he, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but he was made pastor of the Baptist church.
Well, my father, again, if you people follow baseball, my grandfather Chesbro, I didn't ever know him. He was a pastor. And he was born in Savoy, Mass. How many people know where Savoy is? Okay, it's up on the Mohawk Trail. It's up here, there's a Florida up there. Well, my grandfather, Chesbro, was born in Savoy, but then they moved over to Adams. And he had a cousin, if you follow baseball, his name was Jack Chesbro. And if you look in the Baseball Hall of Fame, you'll see his name. I got his baseball card at home. His record still holds. Back in the early 1900s, he was a pitcher for the Yankees, which back then it was called the New York Highlanders, I think. And he won 41 games when he pitched. He must have had a rubber arm. And then my grandfather came, the Chesbros came to Osterville in 1927. And my grandfather took one look at me and he died in 1937. So that, I wish I had known him. He went to Brown. He was a graduate of Brown College. He served in the reserves of whatever it was during the Spanish-American War. Oh, and he also played for the Brown football team. He was an All-American, Grandpa Chesbro, and he went to Brown University with John D. Rockefeller. And I have an old cardboard photograph home of my grandfather on the football team with Rockefeller, not the old John, but the young John. All right. Any other questions? Okay.
That was easy.
Thank you.